Hey, no, good. How are you, Mike? Super. Universe is unfolding as it should.
You have glasses and everything today. We're set.
Yeah.
Okay. There. Good afternoon. We'll call this council meeting to order. Please stand.
We will begin this meeting of council by acknowledging that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. Long before today, as we gather here, there have been Aboriginal peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Wendat, and Haudenosaunee peoples.
Thank you very much, Councillor Aragona. That takes us to item number 4, which is the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Aragona, that the agenda of the meeting of council on February 18th, 2025 be adopted as presented. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Item number 5, are any declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll go to item number 6, which is the adoption of the minutes of previous meetings. It's moved by Councillor Aragona, seconded by Councillor Cardy, that the minutes of the January 21, 2025 council meeting and January 28, 2025 special council meeting be received and adopted. Any errors or omissions, corrections on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll call that question as well. All in favor? That's carried. Staff reports. Our draft water wastewater budget. So we've been waiting a while for it. I know this presentation from staff. I just want to begin, and I'm sure they'll finish by saying it's a draft budget. We know that we're in between treasurers, and staff have been pulling together the numbers. They felt comfortable enough bringing this draft forward for you today. There's still some other pieces to add to it. So with that, I'll turn it over to the CAO to kind of carry that thought. There's still some things to add to the budget that they could expect to see.
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So as you'll note, when you take a look at 2024 budget and the 2025 proposed budget, there's not much that we're proposing additional other than CPI inflations on most of the line items. There aren't many additional capital projects that we're proposing without any funding. So you'll see that down in the capital section. I did want to tell council, so there are some variables that need to be updated still. So the 2025 insurance rates, we do have the actuals now. We just received them last week. So those will be updated to reflect the actual rates. There are some interest rates that we are, our financial consultants are reviewing for input. Those include the interest rates from what now we'll receive from water wastewater billing and interest rates on the water wastewater side, or interest collected on water wastewater side that should be reflected in the budget, but currently are sitting with the general side. So those things will be updated to reflect the actuals. The other thing that I wanted to tell council was, through some of our financial resources, it's been confirmed that we were running a 250,000 cumulative deficit. So that has been confirmed. And it was supposed to be recovered through the IO debenture, but it was never picked up. And so, not for discussion today, as we have to wait for the 2023 audit to determine an up-to-date reserve schedule. But once that's determined, all of those things are determined, then staff's gonna bring back a report with some of the options for the deficit. And it will be updated, the actual deficit number will be updated through the 2023 audit as well.
Okay, so it's sort of the elephant in the room. Everybody needed to know that
Yeah.
there's no mystery. You can't explain how it got dropped and didn't get added to the debenture. But what we're faced with is a staff report coming in the near future on how to deal with it.
That's right.
All right, okay, everybody okay with that? Marty,
Is that the deficit water wastewater?
that was the deficit, 250,000.
Yeah, I know, but is it out of the jet, where will it show itself?
Water, wastewater.
Water, wastewater, yeah.
Okay, didn't want to cut that off because we had lots of discussions about it last year, but we hadn't confirmed 100%. Now we know it was part of the LSSDS. It was parked as liquidated damages, not picked up when the debenture was obtained, and transition time.
That's one other related then, is the audit that we're waiting for now, did that stem from that? Partially from that, the questions around that deficit?
No, that's our regular audit.
Yeah, okay, there was no special audit happening
No.
around that deficit. Okay.
No, go ahead.
For you, Madam Mayor, will we have to pay interest on that $250,000?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check with the financial consultants, but not that I know of, but I'll check and I'll report back.
Okay, so that kind of answers the other question, and we can probably go forward with this budget. Okay, is deficit still or this?
No.
Okay, were you gonna do a presentation?
No, we don't really have anything additional, like I said, for capital projects that's not self-explanatory, so and time constraints, we opted just to have the budget for discussion purposes, and then if council decides to add anything or change anything, then we can bring it back.
Okay,
at
good.
subsequent meeting.
I'm sorry if I'm out of step there. No, so that's great. So go ahead, Councillor Carter.
So, and I guess my first question would be obviously on the revenue side, if you look at the numbers, there's a slight difference there, but $390,000. I'm assuming that the OSIF grant is gonna be applied against the operating budget this year instead of the water wastewater, why is it not in the
So
budget?
OSIP is line 10 for everybody kind of hunting around there is, so.
Yeah.
Peter's,
So the $100,000 doesn't show there.
Peter's gonna answer that for you.
So through your worship, so OSIP, we have to apply towards projects that are eligible, water, wastewater, roads, storm. So without projects that are eligible in this capital budget, the amounts that we have awarded can be spent both either on the general side or the water wastewater side. I believe we're gonna be proposing some projects on the general side that would be OSIP eligible, but right now there's nothing in the nothing in the water wastewater side, OSIP eligible. Now, if neither side were to spend that OSIP, we earmark that for future projects, and we know we have lots of capital projects coming up on the water wastewater sides. You can carry up to 5 years of OSIP together to fund those projects, as long as you name an intended target as you go forward.
Okay, so let's just summarize that because that's important for everybody to understand. OSIF cannot be spent willy-nilly. It has to be for an identified project that falls within the criteria of the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. And that is generally speaking, roads, bridges, water, wastewater, storm. Is that the idea? Okay. Okay, next question. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, just on the format, it seems every time we look at this, it's in a slightly different format. One thing I really miss seeing is the actual. It just gives the impression that we know what we spent and we know where we're going with this budget. If we just keep doing take last year's approved budget and add the 10% or 8% or whatever, it doesn't really give you a sense of our performance against the budget.
Will the next version have actual in it?
Again,
CAO?
that's what the council prefers to see.
I think it absolutely needs to have that for councils.
We've got year end done. Do we have year end done?
There's still some reconciliations outstanding with the financial
So
consultant.
the next version, we should be able to pick up most of the year.
Yeah,
And
it's just
through you,
December.
your worship, I think, if, this was in a format that some notes were applied, it would save a lot of questions. There's some ambiguous things there, like when I just assumed the OSEP money was gonna be on the operating side this year, but, when you see the, you know, the comparative difference there, I know that, we're first intake of the, HEWF, Housing and Haven and Water Fund, so we're certainly not gonna be in the second intake there. We don't qualify. So some of those things you can figure out for yourself, but when the numbers are that much different, like, 390,000,
Yeah.
a few notes right on it would be great for, I think, everybody to.
Okay, but I think we can adjust that right now. And let's do the blocks. Let's do the blocks and give everybody a chance. Let's give staff the opportunity. So as opposed to line by line, do the divisions. So everybody okay with that? It won't take long, but there'll be some process to what we're following that will be more logical than just jumping around. All right.
We did used to have, we had notes, with
I know, but we
variants.
are in between treasurers right now. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
part of our challenge,
Yeah,
right?
Right,
Right. So, not to cut you off, but, they're doing the best they can.
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So let's look at federal provincial grants just for a few minutes there, team. Any questions about items 9 to 13? Go ahead, Councillor Arizona.
So I think Council Card addressed two of them, the OSIF and the HEWF. But there's still the other two that are there. Can staff speak to why we're not logging anything there? Are the grants no longer available, or is it that we're not eligible? Just some clarity on that would help.
Okay, thanks. Joe, the ISIP grants, go ahead, Peter.
So the original projects are complete, and I imagine there's some fair amount of reporting that's still left to do on them, but we don't have any new expenses for 2025. The item 12 for 2024 was for the Glen Street pumping station modernization, and for line 13 was the generator for the water distribution plant. So both those projects are completed this time.
And I don't know if there's any funding available, but before the next meeting, could we find out if there's an ISIP, if ISIP is available this year, just to answer that part of the question? Okay. Everybody good there? Okay, user fees. Anything, questions for lines 17 to 22? Go ahead, Mark, our Councillor Carlos.
So, connection fees are based on a specific amount per new home built, is that correct? It's about $8,000.
Confirm the amount, please, Peter.
So that's under review as well, but $8,500 currently.
So currently, a connection fee is $8,500.
On the wastewater side alone, $500 for drinking.
Okay, so a new home generally puts in $9,000,
Roughly,
and would that show up in line 19?
line 21.
21. Oh, yeah, right, sorry. Oh. 19 and 21.
Correct,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Yep, okay. So that's 9,500.
Good.
That's what you needed?
Yeah.
Yep, you're brilliant, Peter. Sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Cardy, and I'm glad we're doing this. There's lots of questions.
Yes,
And Councillor
sorry.
Aragona.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So with these connection fees, we think we're gonna stay the same as 2024 budget, the 200,000. There's not gonna be any more growth seen there.
Go ahead.
So the best I can say for that, through your worship, is that they're under review. So the amounts are going to likely change. And the number of houses that are built are in flux. So we have an estimate. Now, those amounts, there are a few eligible projects in this year's budget. The rest, what you'll see at the bottom, will go to reserve. So that might be plus or minus a few percent, or noticeable percent. But if they build more houses or less houses, that will just get sent towards reserves at the end of the year.
Because that's just a reminder to everybody, just like OSIF, connection fees can only be used for those things that the regulation says that they can be.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you good?
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Aragona and then Councillor Carr.
Just to follow up to that question, so this is through you, Madam. So this, Peter, is based on projections from the builder as to what we expect to see for 2025 in terms of new builds.
Go ahead.
Well, but an aggregate between what we're kind of talking about, what the rates are gonna be, what we project the builder is going to complete, and then projects we have lined up for this year's budget.
Okay, Councilor Carr.
To clarify, through your worship, we now have a dedicated fund for connection fees. It's not going into general reserves. It'd be 140,000 to look at things.
You're right.
You've got 200,000, 60,000 to expense against it, so the 140 goes into that reserve account.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Okay, Councilor.
So I mean, I'm a bit of a repeat from last year when we talked about this, but a frustration is that that's the only money other than tax revenues we get from development. So I do want to talk at some point about, because a difference from OSIF to this is it's us that choose to use those dollars for something called connection fees. Like, it's not a provincial statute that says the dollars have to be used in connection fees. That's our bylaw we put in place. Correct? I wasn't here then.
Go ahead, Peter.
So through your worship, it's codified in our bylaw how we're going to use them, but the purpose of a charge is to be used for the purpose for which it was collected for.
Right.
So we collect, on the water wastewater side, we collect rates, which is for operation and capital replacement. For the connection charge, we collect the connection charge based on growth. That was the, that was the purpose for the rate, that was the intent of the bylaw, and that was formalized in the bylaw. If the village needs to raise revenue for things that aren't related to growth, that's something that should be applied to the ratepayers as a whole, so we can increase rates to cover those costs.
Okay, makes sense. Go
So
ahead.
in response, the thing is, today we're learning about, like, through our development fee study, but costs that are associated with growth, and they aren't always water, wastewater, there's various, and we're right now only collecting dollars for one
Connections.
component. That's a frustration for the community I'm hearing about, it's a frustration for me, because it constrains what, and when we talk about growth later on, I mean, it's how, is our growth sustainable and affordable for us as a community? The development fee study would indicate, yeah, it's too bad that you can't get those fees today. Of course, there's other means that we learned about in it, but currently today, we're only collecting for water, wastewater from
Okay.
developers. Just putting it on the table.
Yeah, I hear you. Again, yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Did we do a briefing note on this last year? Or did we just have a discussion? Did we do a briefing note?
We did.
Okay.
We did.
And did we take a position at council, or we stayed with our original bylaw? Like, what was the debate like? Maybe somebody can go back and jog our memory.
I think the two,
This is because it's the same council, right? So
Yeah.
we've already dealt with it once. That's what I'm asking.
the two pertinent reports are the connection fee update report, which I believe was just for information purposes, although it was discussion, and the DC bylaw, report, sorry, DC study report, to capture the other side of the growth-related impacts to the development.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, have we dealt with this already in this council? And if we're gonna deal with it again, there's certain steps that we have to follow, and I'm still a little hazy for me, so I'll do a little research between now and the next meeting. It's not easy for Council Card.
I recall we have dealt with it.
Okay.
And that was the general consensus of council.
Okay. So we'll confirm.
I would just add that what we did do was decide we'd do the development fee study, and since
Well,
then,
we'll
we've
confirm,
learned.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, anything else for lines, where are we at? There's 17 to 22. Okay, perfect. 26 to 30, any questions about other revenue? Go ahead.
No, just again, the notes, other
Yeah.
revenue.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Line 27.
Line 27?
Yeah.
What's line 27? Where do we get that $27,000 from? Go ahead, Peter.
The repayment of the Bedford Street loan that the general fund acquired from the water fund.
Oh. Well, that's a little interesting tidbit. Can you flesh that out a little bit more for people who weren't here when we did that?
Yeah, you could probably add more to that, but just to say that we'll add the notes to the next rendition too, so that will be clear.
So the 12,000 worship is the municipal portion of Bedford Street was 120,000. And the general side borrowed that money from the drinking water, wastewater reserves and is paying that back over 10 years.
Okay.
Good. Is that interest or principal, so to speak, if it was a bank loan?
My understanding is it was just, that was the flat, it was
Okay,
flat.
okay. Good.
To follow up on that, so the 15,000 one-time adjustment, is that gonna pay off that? Will that complete that money that we owe to ourselves?
What's the 15,000 one-time adjustment?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Councilor Card. I needed to scroll over a little bit. So that ties into the, one of the capital projects related around the truck. We can talk about it now or we can talk about it then, but I'd recommend talking about it then.
Is this the rec thing?
That is.
Okay, because that requires a briefing note and a whole lot of talking, I think. Okay,
Yeah, but in the capital section.
okay.
We can.
Capital section
open it up
of
here.
general?
Of water, wastewater to
Okay.
start tonight, but we'll might be begging for limitations to
All right, well, my eyebrows raised, we're giving you sufficient notice to, to be prepared. Go ahead.
I would personally be okay if what CAO Westwater is saying is that we're gonna get this back with notes on to
But
clarify
everybody
something.
else has got questions.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
you can. Find out. And we've got public in the,
yeah,
and,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on this side? Go ahead, Councilor Aragon.
Line 30, just, we're removing the, contribution meter reading. I'm not quite sure
Yeah,
what
this
that
is
is.
this dark world of, so it gives us a chance to talk about Rito St. Lawrence and the change to the billing. So it gives us, great question, it gives us a chance to explain and to reinforce the message that we sent out. Staff is sending other things out, putting stuff on our website, that the Rito St. Lawrence felt that it was time for us to take over our billing. And when the CAO met with them, there was a fair bit of negotiation back and forth, but at the end of the day, they decided just to each do their own thing. So the Rito St. Lawrence billing is now coming from Rito St. Lawrence. And yet, so the electricity is coming from Rito St. Lawrence, and of course, the water is coming from the village. So for the viewing audience, people are gonna get two bills. And they can pay their Rito St. Lawrence bill the way they pay any of their other bills, whatever that method that it is, at the bank or whatever. And their, so that's their utilities, and their water, wastewater, they can still pay here. They're gonna get a separate bill for that. That probably didn't answer your question, but that was an opportunity just for me to say all that out loud. So,
Commercial break.
yeah, well, you know, I know there's a couple of questions over the weekend, so we'll get that out, and then the staff are doing some other things. But a little bit more detail on the $600. Go ahead,
Your
Peter.
Worship. The $600 was an amount that was provided by RSL to recognize some of the reads that were done by the village on behalf of RSL. So we of course read our own water meters, but a few of the reads, we did hydro meters for RSL with the separation of duties and the taking over a building by each side on their own. That will carry in 2025.
Okay, it's all good. All right, contribution from reserves. Somebody had got a question about the 65,000. Go ahead.
That's just one of those items too, that 65,000, is that not, I guess it'd be a question for Peter, your worship. Is that a carryover from the contact project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Serious.
Do you mind explaining so everybody and anybody watching can hear?
Yeah, so no, that's a ongoing project, that we've been trying to get over the finish line for a few years now. We waited quite a while for engineering and, we bounced the budget a little late last year, but we're still just trying to get contractor in to come in, quote it and bid it. But that's to increase the contact time of the water treatment plant, bring all of the treatment inside the actual building itself instead of some of the pipes from the outside. The village funded that project a number of years ago, and so it's sat in and out of reserves throughout. So we only bring out the amount of reserves that we use. Each year it's shown up in the budget for the last few years, but with only a few thousand pulled out of it in the last two for some engineering work and bringing some stuff up to speed and getting hopefully contractors ready to bid. So we get an email back that they're excited to bid and they're still working on it with us and.
Oh, that's good. It would just make such a difference, and we've already retrofitted the building and done everything that we need to do. So it's not, ratepayers aren't being taxed or no money's being gathered for that. It's been sitting in reserve for the project. Are we okay with everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Expenses. So salaries, wages and benefits, 4748. Let's just remember that there's quite, I'm sure a migraine headache involved for staff trying to divide the amount of time that Public Works spends on public works or water, wastewater or roads. So I'll go to Peter or Kim for the explanation, but the amount is partly this and partly that and some of that. Kim. Peter.
Thank you, through Madam Mayor. That's one of the variables that will change, the administrative allocation. That will be drawn from the general side. So once we contemplate that budget, that may fluctuate a little bit. Peter, do you want to give some context as to what percentage it was? It was 20.
Yeah, so 25% of the administration as a whole has been attributed to water, wastewater. So some of the overhead, the office space, the services of treasurer, administration, CAOs, et cetera, are more actively funded from the ratepayers as they are utilizing that service of the ratepayers. So it's funded from the general, from the water resource side.
Okay, and the rest of the explanation we will get in the next version?
The explanation is there, it's just 25% of the administration costs. The amount depends on the final budgeted, approved budget amount for administration on the general side. So once the general side administration costs are set, it's a formula to calculate what the water side owes.
But the amount proportionate for water, wastewater versus general for your staff, that has nothing to do with timesheets, right? That's just based on historical data, the percentage of their salary that goes here and the percentage of their salary that goes to the general side. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I was just going to say, your worship, it looks like, was last year the first year we did that? Because it looks like there was a learning curve there and the amount we budgeted, a certain amount of money, and we actually, adjusted that base amount by $49,000. But this year with the carryover, it looks like it's just an incremental increase based on inflation, what have you. Is that the way it is? Am I reading that right? Last year we budgeted 105 and we did an adjustment to that of 49,000 for a total of 154, 168. We carried that number over, and this year the adjustment's 9154. So I'm thinking that percentage wise, that's probably inflation increase
Okay,
kind of thing. Is that?
what's the 9,000?
At the risk of not going into a ton of detail, I'm just put the general in front of us, is represented mostly by the change in amount that was attributed to the administration last year. So there was a bit of a reorganization with the budget lines.
Okay,
It made the amount on the administration side jump up, which made the amount jump up on the water wastewater side, even though the percentages might have stayed the same. Whereas now we're following the format of the administration side, or at least planning to follow the current format on the administration on the general side. So the change is going to be just the 25% of the change for the general side. Again, purely early estimate stage until council reviews the general side.
yeah, and you know, I just want to take a moment. This is our fourth budget with 3 treasurers. So, the reporting changes, and trying to keep it all straight. I really appreciate, Peter, you kind of digging deep there to help us understand what the numbers mean. Anybody on this side of the room with anything to those? Okay. So let's do administrative expenses. And that takes us to line 65. That's 52 to 65. Councillor Hardy and then Councillor Aragon.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just the one-time adjustment for the IT support, communication and marketing equals new. I'm just wondering if you could clarify, what that is being used for.
On what line are you on?
We're on line 54.
Thank you. Go ahead.
For your worship, that is the initial startup costs of bringing billing, water billing in-house.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Same
Same
question.
question.
Asked and answered. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'd just like to mention that, looking at those numbers, I think that's pretty much a bargain from what I've heard, that, if we had engaged, RSL to continue with the billing, I mean, we'd be looking at that.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again, so I think that was a good move for everybody that we go that way.
Anybody, anything else for these lines? All right, then we're gonna move to building and property expenses. We'll take it a little bit slower there. Insurance, 7071, we've already heard that we've got our new rates, but they're not reflected in this yet, so we'll wait. My suggestion is we wait until we get the new numbers. 7374, municipal taxes on water. Is there a question about that?
I asked today and I got the answer actually, that we don't know what the taxes are yet, so it's a bit of a,
Okay.
correct?
In flux. Yep, that's good. Utilities, 7677. This is against our buildings, right? Utilities? Yeah. So this is against the buildings that we own, municipal buildings, okay? Alarm monitoring, pretty straightforward. Repairs and maintenance, any questions, 82 to 84? Seeing none. Vehicle repair and maintenance, 86 to 90. Any comments or questions about that? Go ahead, Councillor Aragona.
Just want clarity on line 89, water instrument calibration. What exactly is that and why is it so much higher?
Go ahead.
So if you'll see from line 82, a reduction of $5,000 in the water repairs and maintenance.
Mhm.
There's a number of ongoing, components of the system that we bring in third party to come in and calibrate. And since it fits better in that instrument calibration line, we moved it from the general catch-all repairs and maintenance into the actual calibration line. Now we have seen those expenses going up over the last few years.
Mhm.
So that's why we're increasing the calibration by 7,500, but only decreasing the water repairs and maintenance by 5,000. So the net increase is about $2,500 on a total of 55,000. But it is, just bringing some things that we bring in the contractors, their specific job is to calibrate these pieces of equipment. But it was never picked up in that line, it was picked up in the general.
Okay.
Quote unquote catch-all.
Okay. Anybody, anything else? Go ahead, Councillor Carter.
It might be just that I'm missing it, but I don't see any line there for streetlights.
General?
Is that general side? Okay.
All right, so financial and other expenses, 94 to 96. Any questions? No, looks good. Contracted services, 100 to 103. No increase, any questions? No? Capital. Watching Peter. All right, so capital is, the rest of it there, 108 to 116. Any questions? Councillor?
I got three, I'll ask two and not somebody else asked
Okay.
about the truck. EA amendment, can you just fill me in on what that 50 grand is gonna be used for?
Line 111?
So through your worship, that's the remainder of the contract for Greer Galloway. They are still working through the EA process. We spent about $24,000 in 2024 on a $75,000 project. So it's just the remainder there. Some of that is already been complete, some of it's still in the works, but.
So will we have another report coming to us from that?
Not unless it's asked for, there is a report on it where we awarded the project to Greer Galloway. The next report due will be the more on the EA process, the EA itself, the results of some of the studies that the council has asked for and funded.
So
Yeah,
it's
so
basically
yes.
all the 50 grand stuff of the original contract.
Yeah, and we'll get a report from them, yes. Number two,
I'm gonna skip by the truck. Water tower upgrades. I did hear from Kim today that we didn't get that grant, but are there? If I recall, the worry was that we'd heard that there wasn't, with the new growth in town, sufficient capacity in our water tower to provide fire services if there was a catastrophic fire. So that remains a concern. What's next in that, on that front? We didn't get that grant. Are you optimistic that there will be other opportunities to? It feels like we're spending money to putter around the edges of a problem. If the real problem needs big bucks.
go ahead.
So through your worship, so right now the capacity of the water tower is right there at its maximum. For calculated firefighting flows. It's not an uncommon problem in small systems. A lot of neighboring municipalities are going through the same process and also chasing the same grants. We're gonna continue to look for grants to, solve that problem as it relates to growth. Right now, we're still right around the capacity of the water tower for firefighting purposes. It's been the case since it was built in the 70s. This amount here, though, is specific to items related to an inspection done in 2019 from Landmark Structures. With only doing the things that are either required to keep that current tower in service or things that are meant for that short-term duration, nothing that's meant to have a 40 or 50-year lifespan at this time. But there's some safety things that need to be worked on with the tower. There's some controls that we're still moving out of the pit underneath it into the small building that's been put up there. And this is just continuing that project in little lights.
I wouldn't mind seeing that once the snow's gone. Yeah, maybe everybody else would as well. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming to the truck?
Through your worship.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there any, chance that we can supplement that, or if we reach the point where we're strictly outclassed here as far as water supply, is there a possibility to make the water supplies, the natural water supplies we have available, on a permanent basis, like with standpipes, whatever, wet pipes? Does that cover us for liability wise or provide any protection? I know it's a water supply, but sometimes common sense doesn't mean much to the rule makers, so.
Go ahead.
So your worship, and at the risk of dissuading from good solid calculations done by people much smarter than I am, it is one of the cases where the smaller systems, the math doesn't always shake out. Like it's something that the tower itself has been good for some time. And the way it's worked is that it's meant to provide full firefighting flow for 2 hours with the tower at its lowest point and the pump and the plant for some reason unable to treat water. So the pumps are down, the tower's at its minimum, and it can run for 2 hours full firefighting flow. Practically speaking, our hydrants are the highest flow rating of hydrants because our system is well sized in the piping, everything's relatively close to the tower, and therefore we get at least 5,000 liters per minute of water out of each one of our hydrants. Theoretically, in that worst case scenarios, we might only have an hour and 50 minutes of firefighting flow at full capacity for those solid 2 hours. I don't believe it's something that we need to do a bunch more than what we're doing right now, which is actively working to get that tower built and sized for growth and chasing those grants that are related to it. As far as the tower sizing right now, it's not something that I'm recommending any more than just keeping this tower in service and working away at some of those smaller items around Landmark.
Yeah, I guess my question was, do the two lakes in proximity to the village provide us any, and practically they do, I mean, I'm sure that if you saw a problem, you direct fire vehicles to lake water, but is that an official, answer to our problem? Can it help at all, or is that just something that you would be forced to do in any case by?
For your worship, at the risk of putting on a different hat that I wear sometimes, the village gets no credit for those lakes in those calculations. Practically speaking, we all here are aware that the fire department is very capable of accessing some of those water supplies. And, well, as you said, there are challenges to it. The mathematical formula doesn't take into account those other resources. It also doesn't take into account, things like tanker shuttles that the fire departments are more than capable of providing as well, but we have to work with the math they provide us.
So a couple of things there that you kind of opened a few doors. Not so much on the budget, but people would have only heard a bit of that conversation and, you know, now I may have some concerns. So the village, as you say, we've got great pipes, great hydrants. We contract with Rideau Lakes Fire Department. We have first-class firefighters. At some point, that is going, the tower, whether it's an hour and 15 minutes or 2 hours, is gonna run out of water. And Council Carr just mentioned at the very end there, but could you just spend a couple more minutes that, what's plan B? The water's not coming out of the tower, then how do fires get fought in Newborough, in Rideau Lakes, or if we don't have water coming out of the hydrants?
Yeah, so through your worship, in those worst case scenarios, we do contact the fire department, we ask them to find another water source. As stated mathematically, our tower is still not at that capacity, it is very close, but is not exceeded that capacity as of yet. If you're looking for the ways that they can solve that problem, I wouldn't necessarily want to speak fully for them, but in Newborough, where there is no water system, the fire department operates a tanker shuttle, calls a mutual aid, and brings their water with them. In the village, there's a tanker and a pumper here available to us. That would be as if the village was unserviced by a municipal water system.
Thank you. Anything else? And, okay, Councilor Aragon is gonna ask the question, I think. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just the other door that was open there that I just want to make sure we cover. You mentioned that we're pursuing funds, grant funds or through the regular process. Or is this something that we're doing now? Are there grant opportunities available, or are you expecting them?
Go ahead.
Well, your worship, this might be more political things, so there is at least one grant open that we are pursuing. But of course, with elections on the horizon for both governments, I can't speak any more than that.
Okay.
So, but for everybody, you know, to understand, between Peter, Addie, Kim, and I, we try and catch any possible grant opportunity. I'm sure they talk about many on their own that they don't bring me into. Sometimes I hear about it a little bit sooner because of another hat that I wear. But and apply for every possible grant that can be. Did we sign up for that email grant thing yet?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Peter's on it.
Oh, good. Okay, I was looking at it today and I just didn't know whether we had gone ahead, and you guys are probably getting the same grant watch or something like that. You're probably getting emails, just there's opportunities there for us. So that help?
Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
There was something just announced, like at Roma, was it? Like I texted you guys and said that there was a new announcement coming from Minister Serma's area.
Yeah.
So it's ongoing as we speak. And that was specifically, not for growth, but that's probably too many negatives. Much of the infrastructure funding over the last couple of years has been only for growth. The funding, the grant that was announced in December, January, was for rehabilitation. So we're hopeful. Go ahead, Councilor Carney.
Through you, Madam Mayor, line 114, replacement truck number 1, $77,500. Just wondering if we could speak to that.
Yeah, thank you.
So through your worship, so this is a project that's similar to the next one. It's stronger than a placeholder, but it'll be spoken to a lot more on the general side. Right now, recreation does not have a vehicle for their purpose. Council started a recreation department, they're extremely active, and they're using a lot of personal vehicles, which is really being an issue from a liability perspective, from a safety equipment perspective, from working on the roads. It's something that I know is just red flag after red flag for us. For council's preview, I know like our truck has been hit a few times. And and we've got it lit up like a Christmas tree. Now, having that, liability in front of us over these last couple of years has been something that has been, front and center with us. Now, when we look at the general side, a really common, method of solving, an issue this for a department that is typically close to break even or even operating at a bit of a deficit, is that recreation will often, take a vehicle from another department, something that's a little bit older, something that they just need to run around for their purposes. So this project, if council warrants it on the general side, one of the options of solving that is to take a vehicle that is being used by the ratepayers, by the utilities, quote unquote, sell it to the general side, so sell it to the taxpayers to be operated as a kind of a pasture, a vehicle that is starting to age out on the utility side, but has plenty of use left for the recreation side, for running around the parks, picking up the branches, loading the materials that go from the harbor to the rink and the harbor and the rink to town hall. And then do some work on the side of the road, whether it's the garbage, the signs, the little things that recreation does that sometimes falls under public works. So should that be something that council supports on the general side, then the replacement would come on the utility side. And what that would allow on the utility side is just picking up a vehicle that is more in line with the utility work itself. So right now, one thing we do is we use a general pickup truck, it works, but we spend a lot of time back and forth to the shop. It's not a big village, it's not a huge impact to us, but I know something just from working on sites where we're always running back and forth. So this will allow us to increase our capabilities a little bit on the utility side, funded by the ratepayers and utilities, replacing the truck that was purchased originally when the village took back over the operations of the systems, and transfer that 7 or 8 year old truck over to the general side. That's where I say I think we're maybe asking for a little bit of patience here, because I think it's something that we'll want to debate on the general side.
Okay.
Should it not pass on the general side, there's a few changes on this side. So yes, we will drop the expense, but we also lose the revenue from the transfer. And there's a bit of a reduction in the equipment, repairs and maintenance for this apparatus, because of course a newer vehicle would have less maintenance, and then even things like the fuel that we use is be sourced from our tanks, where we get a much better price. So removing 77,500 from the expense on the capital project alone has an impact on the budget of about $43,000 in the end. And again, that's kind of where the limitations, I think, we
Okay.
talked about the general side.
So your request is hold on this until we get the full impact on the general side.
I think so, your worship. Yep, I haven't answered any questions, but the final trigger for something like this would come from the general side.
Okay, I don't think they're gonna go along with that. Councillor Card, Councillor Aragona.
Through your worship, looking at your numbers, and I'm just thinking, we're gonna sell a vehicle to your peers in Parks and Recreation. Will the vehicle be straightened out, cleaned up and certified?
Okay, that's in the weeds here now, guys. We're talking
No,
about.
that's like, could be an $8,000 or $10,000 question, so I think it's a legitimate question. Have you accounted for that or are we just gonna move a vehicle over the status quo?
I can answer for sure. So through your worship, mechanically speaking, that truck is maintained in sound and safety. There is a fair amount of corrosion on the outside, but as far as clean and working, we expect that to be a good, clean and working truck for it. We're transferring something theoretically out to pasture, but not necessarily old and broken. It's still a vehicle that is in good mechanical condition. The bills are trending upwards from the mechanics, but that's no different than any other 7-year-old vehicle that runs every day for the municipality.
So you stand behind your warranty then? Okay.
Slightly more than daylight.
Councillor Aaron.
My question is related to line 115, is the truck and the used valve trailer related, or are they two separate things?
Go ahead.
Your worship, two separate things, so if allow me to elaborate a little bit. That is something that we have seen over the last few years, this piece of equipment come up. And we've either.
What is it?
So
Explain to everybody what that is, because the name of it doesn't really indicate what the function is.
yeah, so, there's a tool that, I've used for a couple decades now in utilities, called valve trailer. It's a small hydrovac unit. The village has borrowed, one a few times, for fixing, curb stops. And what they do is they make curb stop repairs. They went from, I'd say, one per day at a cost of $4,000 or $5,000 to 3 per day at a cost of $400 or $500 plus time. The other component of this that is sensitive now is with the ECA for consolidated linear infrastructure. The village has to maintain all of our catch basins, clean them out, suck them out, bring them back into service. And this tool is something that would be able to be used for that. It also exercises the valves. What we found, these are $120,000 to $135,000 pieces of equipment at their base level. Anything else would be the kind of the sky's the limit. But we've found good working used units in the past that we brought back, and we've never had, we've never won any of the bids, if you will, or we've never been able to pick one up used. But the process ahead of that has been always kind of a quick report to council, last minute on table or discussion with CAO and your worship, to see like, hey, we've got a funding source for this. What this line item's intent is if it's passed in budget, we've got council's support. And should an item come up throughout the year, then we wouldn't have to wait, scramble, pull things together. We would have a funding source. If an item doesn't come up, isn't available, then this amount would just go through reserves at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Hey. Okay, anything for the transfer to reserves or transfer to connection fees, that's subject to finalizing the budget, I guess. And that's the end of it, right? Okay, so where did you want to go with this now? You've got some feedback. We've got some things to think about when the general budget comes.
Yeah, so thank you through Madam Mayor. That's really what tonight was for, is just to have the discussion on the draft water wastewater budget. If there's anything that council wants us to pay more attention to, or maybe change in the budget, that was the intention of tonight, just to get it on the table, discuss it, and then we can make the appropriate changes. I think we're confident with the numbers that we have, but I would like to update the things like the insurance. I'd like to get some input on the general side from the financial advisors with respect to the admin allocation, what that's gonna look like, and then bring back more of a solidified draft budget to council. We projected, I believe in the CAO's report at the beginning of the year, it was March 25th would be the first general budget draft. But we were proposing bringing the water wastewater budget back first, not passing it until we pass the general budget. But I'll bring a cleaner version of this budget back to council first before we contemplate the general budget.
And is that all right with everybody? And then, so for briefing notes on capital purchases, we will get one for the truck on the general side. And do you want to see a more written report in relation to the valve trailer? Yes? Okay, so when it comes back next time, a briefing note on the pros and cons and why we need it and what you're looking for. Go ahead,
I
Councilor.
was just going to say, your worship, it might be nice in that briefing note if we looked at the offset, the costs of that trailer are gonna offset.
Yes.
What do we spend the last, say, over the last 3 years on these units, and how does, it sounds like a real bargain to me if I could buy them for that, but, I know those other trucks don't come cheap by the hour, so.
So always a discussion to have with staff, whether they do the briefing note before you give them the, no, maybe not the nod, but the wink. And I like to have briefing notes. I like to have briefing notes, as part of the corporate record. So moving forward, when somebody says, why did we do that? We can go back. So it looks like the valve thing, is getting some support. So if we can have a briefing note on that, and we'll wait for the general. So, any comments, concerns so far? All right.
I think we've done well with, they've done a very good job with what they're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Yeah. So the motion is moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Aragona. The council received the 2025 draft water wastewater budget for discussion purposes. To remind everybody who's watching, it is draft, but it's just a first round for discussion tonight. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Information items, the use, so you, in your package, you saw the UC, the United Counties of Leeds and Granville Growth Management Strategy. And you also saw that Landark submission of draft plan zoning bylaw amendment. We're gonna give a verbal update on that, so motion includes both of these. So the, Landark submit the draft plan submission. Are you gonna cover that in the
Sure.
conversation we had last week?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, in discussions with Landmark over the course of the past couple of weeks, they have submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application to the village. And the next step, would be to hold a public meeting, of course. But at the same time, they've submitted their draft plan to the county for review. So what they've received back were comments from both the county and from our engineer, our planner, and Peter. And collectively, I think there's some insight from us as well. And so from those comments, they are going back to the drawing board. They have to revise their draft plan submission to the county. And because of some of those changes and some of the changing in the phases that's being contemplated, they now have to resubmit their zoning bylaw amendment application as well. So where we deemed it complete, and then the next step was a public meeting, now we're sort of back to step one. They're reviewing it, resubmitting it, and then we have the time clock under the Planning Act starts again for us, so to speak, once we receive it.
So we do not have anything at this point in time. I know they're holding public information meetings. Is it this week?
The next Monday.
Next Monday? So it just for everybody to be aware, that's not something that the village government is involved in. This is by the developer. He wants the opportunity to speak to the public about what they will be putting in it. But for you to have to defend, comment, we haven't got it yet, all right? So if that kind of lets everybody off the hook, we can't comment on what we don't know is coming. And so we'll, when we get it, you will certainly know about that. Then we would have the statutory public meeting, which is different than what the developer is hosting next week. Go ahead, Councillor Aragona.
Just a question to the CEO through you, Madam Mayor. Kim, can you just clarify on process, and if they're submitting a zoning bylaw amendment, but they still have to make adjustments to their plan, is this the right process, or is it putting the cart before the horse here?
Thank you, through Madam Mayor. As I understand it from Steve Pence, he actually has a meeting as soon as tomorrow with Mike Keane to go over exactly what the next step in the process will entail. But the only thing that this council has authority over at this point in time is the zoning bylaw amendment application. So they did it simultaneously, and now they're reviewing it simultaneously. So they're reviewing their draft plan and resubmitting that to the county. And then they have to, any changes that they've made in that, reflect that in the zoning bylaw amendment application as well, and then resubmit to Steve, our planner.
It's okay? Councillor Crawford.
So that means they've officially withdrawn their zoning bylaw amendment?
They haven't officially withdrawn it. There's different processes for withdrawing it. They're reviewing or revising it and resubmitting.
It has to do with fees being paid and things.
Right.
Yeah.
Timelines for that you're aware of as far as?
They have indicated, like I said, Steve and their planner have a meeting tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
They've indicated that it should be forthcoming mid to late February. the zoning bylaw amendment application, and then the draft plan that they're gonna submit to the county will be recirculated to all of the agencies, including us.
Yeah.
Whenever they get that submitted to them as well.
As you said, the clock starts ticking again from the start of the process as it did 6-7 months ago.
And once we declare that the application is complete.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it could come in and CAO may say,
Sure.
you left some gaps here, but, yeah, so that's where we're at. Is that clear? Help
Yeah.
everybody?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm
That's
gonna
okay.
ask for another clarification. So just to make sure I understand completely. So, council will be receiving the zoning bylaw amendment before the draft plan? Is that correct?
The draft plans, right, through you, Madam Mayor, the draft plans, generally speaking, included in the package that they submit to council.
Yeah.
But it will be the same one that they submit to the county simultaneously, yeah.
So is the zoning bylaw coming at the same time as the draft plan is the question? Doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to, but as they've done in past and as they've indicated through our conversations, it will be the same point in time.
Go ahead.
And they need, the developer would need approval on the zoning bylaw amendment, or we would have to implement the zoning bylaw amendment in order for their draft plan to proceed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, they would need the zoning for the draft plan to go through, that's right.
Yeah. And I think that's partly what the information sessions are about, is the developer has told us that they want the opportunity to explain to the public what the drivers are in their zoning bylaw amendment request. Okay, okay on that? So 8.1 you've read, 8.2 was just, we talked about, anything else about growth management doesn't have as much to do with us as 8.2. So the motion is moved by Councillor Aragona, seconded by Councillor Cardy. The council receives item 8.1, 8.2 for information purposes. I'll just call the question. All in favor? Carried. Any notices of motion tonight? Any announcements tonight?
I can announce that FOTA finalized the draw for the hockey memorabilia yesterday, and 5 items drawn by priority as your ticket is drawn, and there are some nice items there. There's a Wayne Gretzky signed stick in a case. There was a couple of jerseys. There was a couple of very nice framed presentations from other players, and 4 of the 5 items were won by local people, so that was very nice.
That's good. Our hockey team is doing extremely well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're they're in the
2-0.
playoffs. They're 2-0, and it's best of
7.
7. So Friday night, 7:30 here. Saturday night, 7:30 there. But
Are you going there? Have you been going?
I haven't, but I certainly am here.
It's on YouTube.
Yes,
in Westport.
yes. I think I texted the other night, didn't I, that I was watching the Canada-US game on TV, and
And our mayor.
the people up north, they would be so happy with me that hockey was on both.
Said our mayor let us the ice too, so.
He got a hat trick, and we all got hats that night. So the person sitting beside me in an extremely loud voice said, Mayor, you got a hat trick. Put your hat on the ice. I thought, oh, I'm so okay. So I did anyway, and then of course other people followed, but it was all right. It was a local lad who got the hat trick, and we were happy to see it for him, for sure. So any other announcements? I just have one quick announcement, and again, it's let's give credit where credit's due to Peter Evans and his crew. We've just been working round the clock to get the roads clear. I mean, the roads were dry in parts today. You guys have just done such a great job. You know, at a recent meeting that Councillor Crapper and I were at, he was talking about how many dogs there are in the village, which means dogs need to be walked. And that's, so therefore the focus also becomes on the sidewalks, and they've just done an absolutely terrific job. So on behalf of all of council, please share with your staff how much we appreciate them working around the clock to get that done. All right, then, any questions from the public? Just stand, please, sir, your name and where you're from.
Keith Konsky, Madam Mayor, just recently moved to Westport.
Question on the agenda?
No, actually, question on just the tax base, the percentage that comes from residential versus commercial.
Okay, so if you don't mind just waiting, I'll get, one of the staff to spend a few minutes with you.
Okay,
We're gonna go in camera, but we could probably do that between this meeting and in camera. Maybe Patty or somebody could talk to them. Oh,
Yes.
anyway, we're gonna take a break in a moment. They'll
Okay.
figure out how to answer your question. Generally
Okay.
speaking, questions are on the agenda, but don't go anywhere. Someone will give you a hand when we take a wee break.
okay.
And what was the name again?
Keith Konsky,
And are you up in, are you living in Westport?
yes,
Good.
yes.
Okay, Koski. I had a Mr. Koski who was a teacher at Eastwood Collegiate and,
Oh, listen.
I don't know. I know somebody in Toronto. All right, we're gonna take a break in a moment and someone will either deal with it tonight or tell you how we're gonna deal with it.
Okay.
Any questions, Susan?
Yeah, sorry.
Just stand, please.
Just with respect to the zoning amendment that Watercolor had put in, because I think the application for what was in the review here from July 5th is that the application had been completed in end of June. So is that a normal length of time to take almost 7 months or more to go back to them and say, you need to make some changes?
So let's be clear,
Sure.
the delay in the public meeting. How do we deal with that question?
Oh, yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The delay is actually by and large due to the applicant. So
Right.
they wanted to sort out all of the comments and
Yeah.
make sure they're addressing them all before they bring it to public meeting. And so, yes, it's taken a while because it goes hand in hand with the draft plan, but it was at their request that we hold off on the public meeting.
Right,
Okay, and so just with respect to that, just to be clear on process, so if per what Councilor Aragona was saying, that you need to approve that zoning amendment first, and then the county would then approve the subdivision plan or not, or is it, there's a sequence there?
That's right. I can double check with Steve Pence to get a confirmation on that, but I believe the zoning has to be in place before they can approve the draft.
yeah, because the zoning is a change, the zoning bylaws is changing the size of the lots, right?
Right.
And so they can't approve a subdivision agreement until municipal council has dealt with that issue.
Okay,
Does that help? Like, that's just real plain speak.
yeah, that's great.
Okay. All right, so that being said, that's questions from the media. We're gonna go into closed session. Let's just take a break for a couple minutes. If staff could deal with Koskies and see who's gonna talk to them and help them with that question. It's, let's go to 6:15. We'll break until 6:15, and then we'll come back and we'll go in camera.
Okay.
That's right at the corner, right?
in the
We're back and, sorry, folks, we're back, but we're gonna go into closed session, which is item 13 on the agenda. And so it's moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Aragona, that council proceed into closed session as permitted under the Municipal Act to consider personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees. All in favor? Carried. Okay. All right, and so thank you very much. We're back in open session. It's moved by Councillor Card, seconded by Councillor Crapper. The council met in closed session to discuss matters pertaining to the identifiable individual and provided instruction to staff. Call the question, all in favor? Carried. And we're at confirmatory bylaw. It's moved by Councillor Crapper, seconded by Councillor Card, that bylaw 2025-09 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of its meeting held on January 28th, 2025, February 18th, 2025, to be read first, second, and third time and finally passes 18th day of February 2025. All in favor? Carried. And we're going to adjourn. It's moved by Councillor Card, seconded by Councillor Crapper, that this meeting of the Council of the Village of Westport adjourn at 6:40 PM. All in favor? Carried.